10 cents. That is the price of the meal that kept construction workers functional through 12-hour shifts, pouring concrete for the Hoover Dam in 1931, that sustained the longshoremen who loaded cargo on the docks of New York and Baltimore through the worst economic collapse in American history, and that a growing body of modern research is now confirming produced a specific anabolic and anti-inflammatory effect in aging muscle that the supplement industry has spent 4 decades failing to replicate at 40 times the cost. A meal that costs 10 cents per serving. That has been sitting in the grain aisle of every grocery store in America since before the Depression made it the nutritional foundation of the hard-working generation this country ever produced, and that no supplement company has ever promoted because the economics of doing so are structurally impossible. The meal is oatmeal, not the flavored instant packets loaded with sugar and artificial coloring, not the processed quick-cook variety that has stripped out the biologically active fraction for the sake of convenience. The whole rolled or steel-cut oats that Depression-era laborers ate every morning from bowls that cost less to fill than anything else available, and that modern nutritional biochemistry has now confirmed we're delivering 3 separate muscle-relevant mechanisms simultaneously that no protein powder, no creatine formula, and no amino acid supplement addresses in combination. The story of how we know this begins not in a modern laboratory, but in the records of the Depression-era public health system. In 1932, the United States Public Health Service documented something that puzzled the nutritional scientists of the era. Among the laboring population that had maintained high physical work output, despite severe caloric restriction during the worst years of the Depression, the dietary common denominator was not meat, not dairy, and not any of the protein sources that emerging nutritional science of the period was beginning to identify as the primary drivers of physical capacity. It was grains, specifically whole oat preparations, consumed as the primary caloric foundation of men who were performing sustained physical labor at intensities that modern exercise scientists would classify as high-volume resistance training combined with aerobic work, doing it daily, with caloric intake that would be considered inadequate by modern sports nutrition standards, and maintaining the physical capacity to continue doing so across months and years of economic hardship. The public health researchers of that era attributed the finding to caloric sufficiency without understanding the specific mechanism. It took several decades of nutritional biochemistry to identify the compounds in whole oats that were doing something no one in 1932 had the vocabulary to name. The first mechanism is beta-glucan. The soluble fiber fraction of whole oats contains beta-glucan in concentrations of approximately 3 to 4 grams per serving, one of the highest dietary concentrations of this compound in any commonly available food. Beta-glucan does not directly build muscle. What it does is regulate the hormonal environment in which muscle is either preserved or degraded. Research published in the European Journal of Nutrition documented that beta-glucan supplementation significantly increased IGF-1 levels, insulin-like growth factor 1, in human subjects over a controlled trial period. IGF-1 is one of the primary anabolic signaling molecules in the body, operating through mechanisms parallel to but distinct from testosterone and growth hormone. In men over 50, IGF-1 levels decline progressively as part of the hormonal shift associated with aging, contributing directly to the anabolic resistance and accelerated muscle protein degradation that the supplement industry markets creatine and protein powder as solutions to. Beta-glucan from whole oats stimulates endogenous IGF-1 production through gut-mediated hormonal signaling pathways. 10 cents per serving, documented in peer-reviewed research, absent from every supplement company's advertising because oat fiber cannot be patented and generates no margin worth promoting. The second mechanism is Avenanthramides. These are polyphenolic compounds unique to oats, found in no other commonly consumed grain, that demonstrate anti-inflammatory activity through inhibition of NF-κB, the same master inflammatory transcription factor, targeted by pharmaceutical anti-inflammatory drugs, and that you have heard discussed in the context of frankincense, turmeric, and other plant compounds with documented clinical evidence. Chronic low-grade systemic inflammation is the mechanism that drives accelerated muscle protein catabolism in men over 50 independently of hormonal status and independently of protein intake. A man whose systemic inflammatory burden is high can consume adequate protein and still lose muscle mass net because the catabolic signaling generated by chronic inflammation exceeds the anabolic signaling generated by dietary protein. The Depression-era laborer who ate oatmeal every morning was suppressing this inflammatory cascade with Avenanthramides while simultaneously stimulating IGF-1 with Beta-glucan and doing both of these things before any nutritional scientist had identified either compound or understood what it was doing in the body. The observation preceded the mechanism by 50 years. The mechanism is now documented. The food is still 10 cents per serving. The third mechanism is arginine. Whole oats contain approximately 800 milligrams of arginine per serving, placing them among the more significant dietary sources of this semi-essential amino acid relative to their cost. Arginine is the primary substrate for nitric oxide synthesis in the vascular endothelium. Nitric oxide is the signaling molecule that dilates blood vessels, increases blood flow to working muscle during exercise, accelerates nutrient and oxygen delivery to muscle tissue during recovery, and reduces the vascular resistance that limits sustained physical output in aging men whose arterial compliance has declined. The pharmaceutical industry has developed multiple drug categories targeting nitric oxide pathways for cardiovascular conditions. The supplement industry sells arginine and citrulline in pill and powder form at between $30 and $60 per month. Whole oats deliver arginine as part of a complete food matrix, also containing beta-glucan and Avenanthramides at 10 cents per serving, from the same bowl that the men who built Depression-era America ate every morning before going to work. The men who built Hoover Dam did not know what IGF-1 was. They did not know that their morning oatmeal contained Avenanthramides that were suppressing the inflammatory cascades that would otherwise have accelerated muscle degradation under their extreme physical workload. They did not know that the arginine in their oats was supporting the nitric oxide production that allowed their vascular systems to sustain hours of high-intensity labor under conditions of caloric restriction. They knew that the men who ate oatmeal every morning could work. They knew that the meal was cheap enough that no level of economic hardship put it out of reach. And they ate it every day, across years of sustained physical labor that would exhaust most men with full access to modern sports nutrition within a matter of weeks. The reason whole oats disappeared from serious sports nutrition conversation follows the same economic logic that applies to every effective, unpatentable food compound. By the 1980s, the supplement industry had established protein powder and creatine as the dominant products in the performance nutrition market. Both compounds could be standardized, manufactured at scale with controlled quality, and sold at margins that supported advertising, athlete endorsements, retail placement fees, and the editorial environment of fitness publications that effectively functioned as distribution channels for supplement marketing. Oatmeal generates margins insufficient to fund a single page of advertising in any fitness publication. A food manufacturer cannot make the IGF-1, anti-inflammatory, or nitric oxide claims on an oatmeal label that would connect the product to the mechanisms the research documents, because the regulatory pathway for those claims is designed for pharmaceutical products, not commodity grains. The result is a performance nutrition information environment in which a 10-cent food with 3 documented and distinct muscle-relevant mechanisms is invisible, and $40 products targeting single mechanisms dominate the conversation. The practical protocol is simpler than any supplement regimen. Purchase whole rolled oats or steel cut oats, not instant, not flavored, not pre-portioned packets. 1/2 cup of dry whole rolled oats cooked in water or whole milk produces a serving containing the full beta-glucan, avenantramide, and arginine content that the research documents. Consume this as the first meal of the day, which aligns with the cortisol peak of the morning hormonal cycle, during which the anti-inflammatory activity of avenanthramides is most effective at counteracting the catabolic cortisol signal that drives muscle protein breakdown during the overnight fasting period. Do not add sugar. The insulin spike from added sugar blunts the IGF-1 response that beta-glucan stimulates by disrupting the gut-mediated hormonal signaling pathway that produces it. Whole fruit added to the bowl provides sweetness alongside additional polyphenols and fiber without the disruptive insulin response of refined sugar. A tablespoon of natural nut butter adds arginine from a second source and dietary fat that slows digestion, extending the window of sustained energy and amino acid availability that the oatmeal itself initiates. The cost of this protocol at 1 serving per day is approximately $3 per month for the oats. Compare this to the average monthly cost of a creatine supplement at $15 to $40, an IGF-1 support supplement marketed specifically to men over 50 at $30 to $60, or an anti-inflammatory supplement targeting NF-kB inhibition at $20 to $40. The oatmeal addresses the mechanisms that justify those three separate supplement categories simultaneously in a food matrix form that the body has been processing efficiently for thousands of years at a cost that Depression-era laborers could afford on wages that would not cover a single serving of most premium protein powders today. The men who built the strongest physical infrastructure in American history during the worst economic period of the 20th century were not doing it on supplement stacks. They were doing it on whole food that cost 10 cents per serving and delivered mechanisms that modern nutritional biochemistry has spent decades characterizing with precision. The characterization confirms what the observation of a generation of hardworking men already established empirically. The morning oatmeal bowl produced physical capacity that caloric restriction alone could not explain. The compounds responsible for that capacity are documented. The food that delivers them is unchanged. What changed between 1932 and now is who controls the channels through which performance nutrition information reaches men who need it, and what those channels require economically to sustain themselves. The 10-cent meal that built the men who built America did not fail. It was replaced by a marketing structure that required products it could own. The oats are still in the grain aisle. The beta-glucan is still in the oats. The Avenanthramides are still in the oats. The arginine is still in the oats. And the men who ate them every morning through the worst economic conditions in modern American history maintained the physical capacity to do work that modern men with full access to sports nutrition rarely approach. Tell me in the comments whether oatmeal was a staple in your household growing up, and whether the men in your family who ate it regularly maintained the kind of physical endurance into older age that you are trying to reclaim now. The answers in that thread will document something that no supplement clinical trial has ever funded the infrastructure to record. Subscribe. Because the archive of what the Depression-era food system understood about sustained physical capacity that the modern supplement industry replaced with $40 products is significantly larger than 1 grain, and every entry in it costs less than what you are currently spending and addresses more of the right mechanisms simultaneously.